So before we go ahead and open a Camera Raw file, let's take a look at what one of these files looks like when it is sitting on your computer. So here is a group of images I shot using the Canon Camera Raw file format. You'll notice that the appendix on all of these images is .cr2. This is different than from our JPEGs, which were .jpg. So CR2 stands for Camera Raw, and this is a Canon proprietary RAW file. If you are using a Nikon camera, you are going to see the Camera Raw file is NEF. And if you're using some other brand besides Canon and Nikon, just consult your owner's manual and you will see the appendix setting for that type of file. I'm going to go ahead and double click on this file, and you'll see then the file opens up in a Camera Raw window that is actually kind of a pre-Photoshop window. So it's actually allowing me to make some adjustments to this file using these sliders over here before I even actually open up the file in Photoshop. So as you can see, I've taken a file that is somewhat on the dark side, and we're going to open this up, but before we open it up, we are going to make some adjustments to it. In the shadows of the image, the people's faces are pretty dark, and in just using a straight JPEG in Photoshop, this would be a pretty challenging adjustment. But with the power of Camera Raw here, we are just going to add a little bit of exposure to this image, and then I'm also going to add some fill light to the image. And notice as I add the fill light to the image, those areas in the shadows are now starting to open up. So you can see that before I added the fill light, the women's faces were not very clear. As I brighten this image up, you can see their faces get much brighter in there. I can also reduce the amount of black in the image or increase that. And you can see by increasing the black in here, I've actually kind of popped the contrast of the image or really made the blacks blacker. And by adding this little bit of fill light, I've cleaned up some of those shadow areas that were really dark. All of these sliders target a specific area of the image except for the exposure slider. The exposure slider is just controlling the overall exposure of the image. And in this image I'm adding about plus 50 to the image to brighten it up a little bit. The recovery slider is used to bring back areas that are really bright, or in photography we use the terminology blown out. So if you see these areas right here in red, this is actually a warning from Photoshop telling me these areas are too bright. I'm actually going to turn that warning off. And now with the recovery slider, watch as I slide that to the right, you'll see these bright areas that were previously highlighted in red. It'll bring back some of the detail in that area. So you notice the sidewalk becomes a little bit darker and we see some of the cracks and so forth in the sidewalk. The contrast looks pretty good the way it is with fixing the darks in there. Of course, if I wanted this image darker, I could target those bright areas by pushing the brightness slider to the left, or if I wanted to open them up or just make them brighter, I could push that to the right. So once I've got these initial adjustments set, I'm going to just hit Open Image, and this image will open up directly into Photoshop for me. And we can see it here opened up directly into Photoshop.